Hello and welcome. I'm Oct09-Pt1 sitting in for Riz Khan. My guest today is an Israeli journalist who's lived for years in the Palestinian territories, chronicling day-to-day life under the occupation. Amira Hass joined the staff of the Israeli daily newspaper Haaretz in 1989 at the height of the first Palestinian Intifada. Shortly afterwards, she did something no Jewish Israeli journalist has done before. She moved to live full-time in the Palestinian territories. She lived in Gaza for 3 years and later moved to Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, where she's lived for more than a decade. Her reporting has often earned her the wrath of both Israeli and Palestinian authorities. Earlier this week, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Women's Media Foundation. Today we speak with Amira Hass about her work covering the Israeli occupation. Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or email, and we also welcome your phone calls on this show, of course. Amira, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Let me start with the book that you've written, Drinking the Sea at Gaza. You write in the introduction of the book that your desire to live in Gaza stemmed neither from adventurism nor from insanity, but from the dread of being a bystander. I can understand that from a journalist's point of view. You don't want to be a bystander, but it was a big step. What was your feeling at that time?
Moving to Gaza?
Yes.
That I did what I wanted, and this is to live under occupation, not to come as a visitor once a week, which can teach a lot, as many of my colleague journalists experience. But really to live and to sense what it is curfew, what it is a soldier aiming a rifle at you. It was still the benign times of normal direct occupation, which seemed today in a way easier than what it is today. I felt I really did what I wanted.
But you were going to go into a conflict zone. There were a lot of dangers around. How did your family and friends respond to that decision when you made it known?
You know, I come from a globalized hamula, a globalized clan called the left wing. So it's not a secret. And my family and my immediate circle of friends saw it as welcomed it and saw it as a natural decision.
And how did you make that move? I mean, we know that Gaza is completely surrounded. There's a barrier all around.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. When I moved, it was easier. And of course, as a journalist, of course, no Israeli Jew lived there before me. But I'm a typical Israeli. I establish facts on the ground.
Of course, that means living in
so I
in
made
Gaza.
a decision, and nobody could take me out.
Living in Gaza, but not in a settlement.
Yeah, even in Arafat times, they tried to kick me out of Gaza in '95. And I told the intelligence people who ordered me to leave immediately, I told them, you have no right to do it because according to the Oslo Accords, still Israel is the sovereign in this place. So you cannot kick me out.
Well, I have a question about that, actually. I mean, that was the kind of official response you got from Palestinians. But what kind of response did you get from ordinary Palestinians on the ground in Gaza when you moved?
In Gaza, it was very easy because many Gazans have worked in Israel over the years. And they are not, you know, they don't indulge in symbolism. So they saw Israelis coming, or an Israeli coming to Gaza. They immediately concluded that he or she are not enemies because they don't come as enemies. And it was quite easy. Many Gazans know Israeli society because they've been working so long in Israel, or were in prisons, Israeli prisons. So they came to know, they humanized the Israeli society. They de-demonized it because they knew it's a normal society with all sorts of people, that it's not homogeneous. This why it was very easy for me to live there, and I was never hiding the fact that I'm that I was an Israeli till today. Also now, when I got to Gaza immediately, a few days after the Israeli onslaught, winter onslaught, I made it. Always made it certain that everybody knows I was an Israeli, and I encountered no problem. On the contrary, I went to houses which were, you know, people who lost their families, people who lost their houses, their fields. Just a few days ago, they went out of this terrible nightmare of Israeli attack, and when they heard I was an Israeli, they started even, in many places, they started even speaking Hebrew to me and telling me about their employers, former employers, who had called them to find out how they were, or asking me if I knew this one or that one in Israel. So Gaza was very easy in that sense.
You know, that is something that we don't hear about very
No.
often, the fact that Palestinians who live in the occupied territories are conversant both in Hebrew and in Arabic.
Not all, and now less and less, because the Israeli policy of separation has not allowed Palestinians over the last 20 years to get to Israel as easily as it was between 1970 to 1991, because there is a pass system that Israel introduced in 91. But still there are many Palestinians who speak Hebrew and understand the Israeli society. Actually, Palestinians know Israeli society much better than the Israelis know the Palestinian society.
At the time you were staying in Gaza, did you at any time fear for your well-being or your life?
No, no. No, I mean, also in the West Bank, if I feared, it was not as myself, as Amira. It was not that I was ever personally targeted, but like everybody, if Israeli planes bombed, or Israeli helicopters or missiles, or shooting near my place, or Israeli tanks bombing an area where I was, so it was dangerous. But not from at the beginning of the Intifada, second Intifada, there were a few incidents where some angry people, when they realized I was an Israeli, were over-aggressive. And there was a case when, but then it was settled immediately because some people came to my rescue, more or less. But it wasn't really dangerous.
You know, there are some people who make the comparison between the occupied territories in South Africa. They say it's just another form of apartheid. Do you believe it is?
Look, I say, and as I said in my acceptance speech, there is a blend here. It's not the Israeli regime is a blend of several components. It's military occupation. It has some characteristics of an apartheid. It has some characteristics of colonialism, and it is democracy for Jews, and there is a limited self-rule for Palestinians. So because it is a blend, people say, no, it cannot be only apartheid. It is not apartheid. It is not. Nothing is 100% similar to what we know from other places. But there are these characteristics that all together, and especially with democracy for Jews, then people mix it and think, because there is democracy for Jews, because I sit here and I know that I will encounter no problem when I get back to Israel, then everything is fine. No. And when I talk about apartheid, it is not just about the occupied territories. It is the whole system that you have one chunk of territory between the sea and the river, which is actually governed by one government, the Israeli government. There are two peoples who live in this, between the sea and the river. But the Jews have the privileges, the Jews have rights that Palestinians do not have. Be they Israeli citizens who have voting rights, but they are deprived of many other rights, social, economical, historical rights in their own homeland. And Palestinians in Gaza have different sets of non-rights, I would say. Palestinians in the West Bank. So this is very similar of apartheid system, which subdivided the non-whites into several groups, which live under a different set of laws, different sets of rights, access to infrastructure. This is very similar as I see it.
Yeah, it's uncanny actually, because under apartheid in South Africa, of course, the white government stratified the non-white groups into various groups, and then they also had these autonomous Bantustans, where
and this is the self-rule enclaves,
right, which is very similar.
So some things are very similar. It's not about racism, by the way. Unlike South Africa, you enter an Israeli hospital, you see Arab Palestinian patients next to Jewish ones. You see Arab Palestinian doctors and nurses working side by side with the Jewish doctors or nurses. And this is something you never saw in South Africa.
Absolutely.
On the apartheid. So this is not the same.
Now, if it's not about race, then is it just very deep suspicion on both sides?
No, it's about interests. Right now, the Israelis profit from this situation of separation, from this situation of continued occupation and low fire of tension. So you have, by keeping the occupied territories actually under Israeli sovereignty, you make sure there are 500,000 Israeli settlers, colonists. They live in land which is not theirs. They break all international law. They prosper. They get access to water, to good transportation, to electricity, to exemptions from taxes, good education, good health system, which the Palestinians do not have. And they all live in the same territory. I live in Ramallah. Just opposite my former house, there is a settlement of Bet El. When we don't have water in Ramallah because there is quota on water for Palestinians, there is water and Bet El is drowning in the green that they can grow. So you have all these elements of both apartheid and colonialism. But you have 500,000 Israelis who live there. So they feel they don't want to lose it. You have an entire industry of security, which is developed thanks to the fact that we have occupation and we always have to contain the unrest. So Israel is one of the main exporters of weapons and security expertise to all over the world. You have a whole strata of Israelis which gains from this expertise. High-tech employees, high-tech scientists, not only the weapons themselves, the missiles, etc., that they develop.
Right.
So it's a whole range of reasons that it's not about the hatred or the suspicion. It's something that is justifying the maintenance of privileges system.
Right. We have a caller on the line right now. Samir, calling from Bahrain. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Amira Hass is a committed journalist with very high moral standards, and we're proud of her work. I'm a Palestinian Canadian. I'd like to say, though, that she's not a typical Israeli, as she says. Absolutely not. She's from a minority. And number two, she said that the government of Israel is actually an amalgamation of many things and that it is democratic towards its own people. I do not think it's democratic towards its own people because it lies to its people and hides a lot of the facts on the ground that what is happening to the Palestinians. In fact, Israel has never, ever apologized for the occupation of Palestinian land, nor for the massacres that it has committed against the Palestinians. Since 1948, we have never heard an official Israeli apology for anything that the Israelis have committed against the Palestinians.
Okay,
so how can there be peace if there is not even a recognition of that?
Okay, let's give Amira a chance to respond to that.
I said clearly democracy for Jews. I didn't say democracy for the entire people in Israel. I said democracy for Jews. That means that I can say what I say, and I'm not subject to harassment like other journalists in other places that criticize their governments and are subject to harassment. If I were a Palestinian Israeli, it would have been, of course, more difficult. But still, I'm not a Syrian journalist who criticizes the Syrian government cannot go back freely back to the country as I go freely to Israel. And this we have to acknowledge.
Okay, we have to take a short break right now. We'll have more of our discussion in a moment. We'll be right back. Stay with us.